Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back for another math lesson with Miss Kim. This week we've been learning about clocks and all the different types of clocks and how to tell time. We're going to do a quick review. On our last lesson, we learned about digital clock and how to tell time on a digital clock. Now, on a digital clock, we know that there's a colon in the middle, and we know that the left side of the colon is the hour, which is 4, and we know that the right side of the colon is the minutes, which is 00. We know that when there's a double zero, a 00, then we know that we say o'clock. So this is 4 o'clock, okay? Today's lesson, we're going to learn how to tell time on an analog clock. This is an analog clock. You've seen this on our classroom wall, or you might have seen it in your house. We're going to learn how to tell time on an analog clock. The difference between the digital clock and analog clock is that you have the small hand and then the big hand, okay? So we know that the small hand points to the hours, and we know that the big hand points to the minutes, okay? We're gonna watch a video lesson on how to specifically tell time on an analog clock by another teacher. And so I'm gonna have you watch this YouTube video. So let's see, we're gonna watch it together. And then we're gonna see how she teaches how to read analog clock, okay?
This video is for children who need perhaps a little extra practice and review in how to tell time, as well as for my students who were absent during our initial lessons. You will need some paper and pencil. This is a digital clock. We write the time in a digital fashion like this. This kind of clock is called an analog clock, and it's important that we learn how to read them. Most analog clocks have just two hands, a short hand and a long hand. This analog clock has a third hand showing seconds. I have an analog clock here on my whiteboard, and I'm showing you the direction that it goes. This is called clockwise. The long hand starts at the 12 and moves around, and that shows an hour has passed. Here you can see it's 2 o'clock. When it makes a full circle, another hour will go by. The short hand is very important because it's the hand we start with when we're telling time. Here, the short hand is pointing to the 6. Here, the short hand is pointing to the 8. Here, the short hand is pointing to the 10. Sometimes the short hand will be between two numbers. And in that case, you have to think about when that clock went around clockwise, what did that shorthand just pass? In the example I just showed you, it had just passed the 10. We've talked a lot about the shorthand. What about the long hand? It's important too. When you're thinking about the long hand, you're going to start at the top of the clock. That always stands for o'clock. And then we count by fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and 60. And you can't see what I'm doing here, but we never write 60 at the end of a time in digital form, so I'm going to cross that out. Instead, we always write those 2 zeros and we pronounce it by saying it's whatever hour o'clock. Just like 2 zeros represent o'clock, you have to have 2 numbers here. So we're going to put a 0 before the 5. Look at this digital clock. After the 2 dots, you will always see 2 numbers. Now that you have some background, it's time to tell time in 3 easy steps. The first step that we say is start with the short hand. All you have to remember is to look where the short hand is pointing and just write it down. In this case, you would write down 8. The second step is to draw 2 dots. You draw them after the 8, just like this. And finally, the third step is to write the long hand. Look where the long hand is pointing and write it down. In this case, the long hand is pointing straight up to the blue 0 zeros, making it 8 o'clock. That was a pretty fast explanation, so we're going to practice the 3 steps. Start with the short hand, draw 2 dots, and then write the long hand. Again, the first step is to look at the short hand. The short hand points to the 3, so we're going to write the 3 down. The second step is to draw the 2 dots after the 3, just like this. And finally, the third step is to look at the long hand, go all the way up above the numbers where we wrote by 5s, and write 0, 0 in this case. The time for this clock shows 3 o'clock. Let's try another one. Remember the 3 steps. We're going to start with the short hand first. In this case, we're going to look at the short hand, and because it went between 2 numbers, it went past the 6, so we're going to go ahead and write 6 down. Our second step, draw the 2 dots, and then the third step is to look at that long blue hand for the blue numbers on the outside, which are 15. Write them down. In this case, the time is 6:15.
Okay, boys and girls, so now we watch this video. I want us to now practice on IXL. And so we're gonna go on IXL and you're gonna do Q2. Okay, let me write that down for you. Going to be doing, whoops, Q2, okay? So let's do this together, okay?
What time does the clock show?
Okay, so we know that there's the shorthand and the longhand, okay? So the shorthand is pointing at the 11, okay? So remember the 3 steps that the teacher said to do is you need to write 11, then you need to write the 2 dots, which is the colon, and then we know that the longhand is pointing at the 12. And so we know when it's pointing at the 12, we don't say 60, we say 00, which is 11 o'clock, okay? So press 11 o'clock. So the answer is 11 o'clock. Super, okay? So let's do the next one again. Let's erase the answer. Okay, so.
What time does the clock show?
Okay, so let's look at where the shorthand is. So the shorthand passed the 6, so we need to write 6 for the hour. So the first step, so we're doing 3 easy steps. So you write the number 6, then second, you need to write the 2 dots, and then now we need to find the minutes, okay? So the long hand is pointing at the 6. Now we don't say it is 6, 6. Now we need to know, we need to count by 5s. We know that from the 1 is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So it is 6:30. Right there, 6:30. There we go. Okay, good. So I want you to practice that. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me on Class Dojo, and then I'll see you next time. Bye.